The sharp crack of gunfire still echoed in Quinn Zeller's ears 3 days later. Even though he was now 2 states away in a cabin so remote, it didn't have an address, just GPS coordinates. He sat at the rough-hewn kitchen table, staring at the burner phone the federal marshals had given him, wondering how his life had gone from boardroom presentations to this suffocating silence in less than 72 hours. "You need to eat something." The voice was soft but firm, belonging to the woman who'd opened her door to him without question when the marshals had arrived in the dead of night. Autumn Reeves set a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of him, her movements efficient and practiced. Quinn looked up at her, taking in the way her auburn hair caught the morning light streaming through the kitchen window. She wore jeans and a faded flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and there was a smudge of what looked like paint on her left cheek. She was beautiful in an understated way that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. The marshals had explained the bare minimum to both of them. Quinn was a witness in a major federal case. Autumn was a trusted civilian who'd helped the program before. She'd keep him safe until the trial. That was all either of them needed to know. "You barely touched dinner last night," Autumn said, pouring herself coffee from an ancient percolator. "And I know for a fact you didn't eat breakfast yesterday either. How long have you been doing this?" Quinn asked, picking up his fork more to appease her than from any real appetite. "Taking in people like me." Autumn settled into the chair across from him, wrapping both hands around her mug. 3 years. You're my 5th placement. The marshals vetted me after my husband died. I had the space, the location, and apparently the right temperament for keeping secrets." "I'm sorry," Quinn said. "About your husband, car accident, 4 years ago now." She said it matter-of-factly, but Quinn caught the flash of old pain in her dark eyes. "This place was supposed to be our retirement dream. Turns out it's pretty good for hiding people instead." Quinn took a bite of eggs. They were perfect, seasoned with something he couldn't quite place. "These are really good." A small smile touched Autumn's lips. "My grandmother's recipe. She always said food tastes better when you put actual effort into it." She paused, studying him. "The marshals said you'd be here for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. We should probably figure out how to coexist without driving each other crazy." "I'm not much trouble," Quinn said. "I can keep to myself." "That's not what I meant." Autumn stood, carrying her coffee to the window that overlooked acres of pine forest. "This cabin is isolated, but it's not that big. We'll bump into each other. Might as well be civil about it." Quinn found himself wanting to know more about her. The impulse surprised him. In his normal life, he barely had time for relationships. His world had been mergers and acquisitions, quarterly reports, and 18-hour days at the helm of Zeller Industries. The pharmaceutical empire his grandfather had built, and he'd expanded into a multi-billion-dollar operation. He'd had exactly 2 serious relationships in his 31 years, both of which had ended because he couldn't spare the time or emotional energy required. Now he had nothing but time, and this stranger was the only human contact he was allowed. "What do you do out here?" he asked. "Besides hide people like me." "I paint," Autumn said, gesturing toward a closed door off the living room. "That's my studio, and I consult remotely for an environmental nonprofit, work I can do from anywhere with an internet connection." "Can I see your work?" She turned, eyebrows raised. "You're interested in art. I'm interested in not going insane from boredom," Quinn said honestly. "But yeah, I like art. Used to go to galleries when I had time." Autumn considered him for a long moment, then nodded. "Finish your breakfast first." 20 minutes later, Quinn followed her into the studio. The room was flooded with northern light from a large window, and canvases covered every available surface. He stopped just inside the doorway, genuinely stunned. Her paintings were landscapes, but not the pretty, sanitized versions sold in hotel lobbies. These were raw and visceral, capturing the violent beauty of storms rolling over mountains, forests on fire, oceans in fury. "These are incredible," Quinn said, moving closer to examine a piece that showed lightning splitting a massive oak tree. He could almost smell the ozone and burning wood. "Have you shown these?" "A few galleries over the years," Autumn said, a hint of self-consciousness creeping into her voice. "But I mostly paint for myself. It's therapeutic. You could make serious money with these." Quinn caught himself too late, realizing how that sounded, like he was reducing her art to dollar signs, but Autumn just laughed. Spoken like someone who thinks money fixes everything. "It doesn't," Quinn said quietly, thinking of the dead bodies he'd seen, the corruption he'd uncovered in his own company, the way wealth had insulated the guilty until he decided to burn it all down by cooperating with the FBI. "But it helps." Something in his tone made Autumn look at him more closely. "What did you do?" Before all this, the marshals had given him a cover story. He was supposed to be a mid-level accountant who'd witnessed a crime. Generic and forgettable. But standing in this room surrounded by Autumn's honest, unflinching art, the lie stuck in his throat. "I worked in pharmaceuticals," he said, which was true enough. "Administration stuff." Autumn nodded, accepting this. "Well, administrator, if you're going to be here for weeks, you should make yourself useful. The deck needs staining, there's firewood to split, and the garden needs weeding." Quinn almost laughed. He'd grown up in a Manhattan penthouse and hadn't done manual labor a day in his life. But the idea of having something productive to do, of working with his hands instead of his mind, held unexpected appeal. "Deal," he said, "on one condition." "What's that?" "Teach me to cook something besides toast." Autumn's smile was genuine this time, reaching her eyes. "I think we can manage that." The first week passed in a strange, suspended rhythm. Quinn woke early, despite having nowhere to be, and found Autumn already up, usually on the porch with coffee and a book. She'd shown him where everything was, given him the guest room and bathroom, and established a few simple house rules. No using real names in case anyone overheard. No going into town. No phone calls except on the secure line the marshals provided. Quinn threw himself into the physical work with an intensity that surprised both of them. He split wood until his hands blistered and his shoulders screamed. He spent hours on his knees in the garden, learning to tell weeds from vegetables under Autumn's patient instruction. He sanded and stained the entire deck in 3 days, working shirtless in the sun until his skin bronzed and his muscles burned. Autumn watched him with barely concealed amusement. "You know you don't have to prove anything, right?" Quinn straightened from where he'd been pulling weeds, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm not trying to prove anything, I just need to keep busy." "You're running from something," Autumn observed, handing him a glass of ice water, "or someone. In your head, I mean." She was too perceptive. Quinn drank deeply, buying time. "Isn't everyone running from something?" "Fair point." Autumn settled on the grass beside the garden, pulling her knees to her chest. "I ran here after David died. Couldn't stand being in the city anymore, seeing couples everywhere, watching life move on without him." "Do you regret it?" Quinn asked. "Moving out here? Sometimes," she admitted. "It gets lonely. But then I remember why I left and it makes sense again." She tilted her face to the sun. "What about you? What are you running from?" "Consequences," Quinn said before he could stop himself. "Of doing the right thing." Autumn opened her eyes, looking at him with sudden understanding. "That's why you're in protection. You told the truth about something." Quinn nodded, not trusting himself to say more. The case he was testifying in involved executives at his own company who'd falsified drug trial results, leading to deaths. He'd discovered it by accident during a routine audit, and instead of quietly handling it internally, he'd gone straight to the FBI. His board of directors had voted to remove him within days, and less than a week later, someone had tried to kill him in the parking garage of his attorney's office. "I'm sorry," Autumn said softly. "That can't be easy, being punished for honesty." "It's fine," Quinn lied. "I made my choice." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to birdsong and the whisper of wind through pine trees. Quinn felt something unknot in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying for months beginning to ease. Out here, away from everything, he could almost believe he was just a normal person spending time with a friend. "Come on," Autumn said, standing and brushing grass from her jeans. "You've earned a break. I'll teach you how to make actual pasta from scratch." The cooking lesson turned into 3 hours of flour-dusted chaos. Quinn proved spectacularly bad at kneading dough, somehow managing to get it stuck to every surface, including his forearms. Autumn laughed until tears streamed down her face, and the sound was so genuine and unguarded that Quinn found himself laughing too, really laughing for the first time since this nightmare began. "You're hopeless," Autumn declared, rescuing the dough from his latest attempt. "How did you survive before this?" "Takeout and personal chefs," Quinn said without thinking. Autumn's hands stilled. "Personal chefs for an administrator," Quinn's stomach dropped. "I meant like meal prep services, you know, those subscription things." She studied him for a beat too long, and Quinn was certain she could see right through him. But then she just shook her head and went back to kneading. "Well, out here you're going to learn to feed yourself. Watch closely this time." Quinn did watch, but he found himself watching Autumn more than the dough. The way she moved with unconscious grace, the little crease that appeared between her eyebrows when she concentrated, the smudge of flour on her nose that she didn't seem to notice. She was nothing like the women he'd dated before, the polished socialites and ambitious executives who treated relationships like networking opportunities. Autumn was real, grounded, present in a way he'd never learned to be. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "Sorry," Quinn said, feeling heat creep up his neck. "I was just thinking about how different this is from my normal life." Autumn did look at him then, her expression softening. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "Good," Quinn said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Definitely good." By the second week, they'd fallen into an easy routine. Quinn continued working on projects around the property, fixing loose boards on the porch, clearing brush from the forest line, and learning basic carpentry from YouTube videos watched on Autumn's laptop. Autumn painted in the mornings and worked on her consulting projects in the afternoons, but they always came together for meals. Quinn discovered he actually enjoyed cooking, or at least enjoyed learning from Autumn. She was a patient teacher, never making him feel stupid for asking basic questions. Under her guidance, he mastered scrambled eggs, then moved on to more complex dishes. Pasta carbonara, roasted chicken, even a halfway decent apple pie. "You're a quick study when you apply yourself," Autumn said one evening, watching him dice vegetables for stir-fry with newfound competence. "Makes me wonder what else you picked up quickly in your old life." Quinn's knife slipped, nearly catching his finger. "What do you mean?" "You just don't seem like an administrator," Autumn said carefully. "The way you think, the way you approach problems. You have this kind of strategic mindset, like you're used to making big decisions." Quinn focused on the vegetables, keeping his movements steady. "Maybe I was good at my job." "I'm sure you were." Autumn leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I'm not trying to pry. I know you can't tell me details. I just want you to know that whoever you were before, whoever you still are, it's safe here. You don't have to pretend with me." The kindness in her voice made Quinn's throat tight. He set down the knife and turned to face her. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Good." Autumn pushed off the counter and bumped his shoulder with hers, a gesture that felt both casual and intimate. "Now finish those vegetables before the oil gets too hot." That night, after dinner and dishes, they sat on the porch watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Quinn had pulled 2 beers from the fridge, and Autumn had accepted hers with a smile that did dangerous things to his composure. "Can I ask you something?" Quinn said after a while. "Depends on the question. Why did you agree to do this? Taking in witnesses. It's got to be disruptive to your life, not to mention potentially dangerous." Autumn took a long pull from her beer before answering. "After David died, I felt useless for a long time. Like I was just taking up space, going through motions. Then Marshall Hendricks approached me about the program. Said I had a unique situation, the isolation, the skills from my previous career in crisis counseling." She glanced at Quinn. "It gave me purpose again. Helping people who are in terrible situations, giving them a safe place to land. That matters to me." "You were a crisis counselor," Quinn said, pieces clicking into place. That explained her calm presence, her ability to rid him so easily. "For 10 years before I moved here. Worked with trauma survivors mostly." Autumn's voice was soft in the darkness. "I understand what it's like to have your world turned upside down, to not know who to trust. If I can make that even a little bit easier for someone, then the disruption is worth it." Quinn found himself reaching over, covering her hand with his. The touch sparked something electric between them, and he saw her breath catch. "You're remarkable," he said. "You know that." Autumn didn't pull away, but her eyes were troubled when they met his. "Quinn, we shouldn't." "Shouldn't what?" "Whatever this is becoming." She gestured between them with her free hand. "You're here temporarily. You're in crisis. This kind of proximity, this intensity, it creates false intimacy. I've seen it before." Quinn knew she was right. He knew he should pull his hand back, maintain professional distance, protect them both from something that could only end badly. But he couldn't make himself let go. "What if it's not false?" he asked quietly. "How would we even know?" Autumn's voice was barely a whisper. "How can either of us trust what we're feeling when everything is so heightened and strange?" Quinn had no answer for that. She was the expert in human psychology, not him. But he knew what he felt when he looked at her, when they laughed together over cooking disasters, when she explained the meaning behind her paintings. It felt more real than anything in his regular life had in years. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know I've never felt this comfortable with anyone before, this quickly." Autumn did pull her hand away then, standing and walking to the porch railing. "That's the point, though. This isn't real life. Real life is messy and complicated and full of obligations. This is a bubble. Once you leave here, once you go back to your actual existence, all of this will feel like a dream." "Maybe I don't want to go back to my actual existence," Quinn said, standing too. "Maybe this is showing me what I've been missing." "You don't mean that." Autumn turned to face him, and in the moonlight he could see tears glistening in her eyes. "You have a life, a career, people who matter to you. I'm just the person keeping you safe until you can return to all that." "Autumn, I'm going to bed," she said, setting her half-finished beer on the railing. "Good night, Quinn." She was gone before he could respond, leaving him alone with the stars and the ache in his chest that had nothing to do with physical labor. The next few days were strained. Autumn remained polite but distant, and Quinn hated it. He hated the careful way she avoided being alone with him, the way their easy conversation had been replaced by stilted small talk. He threw himself into more projects, building raised garden beds and repairing a section of fence that had started to lean. But the physical exhaustion didn't stop him from thinking about her. On the fourth day of their Cold War, a massive storm rolled in. Quinn had seen it coming on the weather app and helped Autumn secure everything outside, bringing in loose items and making sure the generator was fueled in case they lost power. By evening, rain lashed the cabin in sheets, and thunder shook the windows. Quinn was reading in the living room when he heard a crash from Autumn's studio, followed by a muffled curse. He dropped his book and hurried to the door, knocking sharply. "Autumn, you okay?" "Fine," she called back, but her voice was shaky. "Just knocked over some canvases." Quinn opened the door anyway and found her kneeling in the middle of the floor, surrounded by fallen paintings. The wind must have blown the window open, sending rain pouring in and toppling her carefully organized stacks. Autumn was gathering them frantically, trying to keep them from the spreading puddle. "Let me help," Quinn said, already moving. He pulled the window shut and latched it properly, then joined her in rescuing the canvases. Most had been spared, but a few showed water damage along the edges. "This one was for a commission," Autumn said, staring at a partially ruined mountain scene. Her voice cracked. "It was supposed to ship next week." "Hey." Quinn took the canvas from her gently, setting it aside. "We'll fix this. You have photos of it." "What good will that do?" Autumn swiped at her eyes angrily. "I can't exactly recreate 3 weeks of work in 7 days. You can if I help." Quinn gestured at the damage. "Tell me what to do. I can't paint, but I can prep canvases, mix colors, whatever you need. We'll get this done." Autumn looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "Quinn, you don't know anything about art, so teach me. You've been teaching me everything else." He smiled slightly. "I'm a quick study, remember?" Something shifted in her expression, the walls she'd built crumbling just a little. "Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because you've been nothing but kind to me since I got here," Quinn said simply. "Because you gave me a safe place when I had nowhere else to go. Because I care about you." The last part slipped out before he could censor it. Autumn's breath hitched, and for a long moment they just looked at each other, kneeling on the floor surrounded by her art while the storm raged outside. "I care about you too," Autumn whispered. "That's the problem." Quinn reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hand, brushing away a tear with his thumb. "Why is that a problem? Because you're leaving. Because this isn't sustainable. Because he kissed her." It was gentle and tentative, a question more than a statement. Autumn went still for a heartbeat, then kissed him back with an intensity that stole his breath. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as the kiss deepened, turned desperate. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Autumn rested her forehead against his. "This is such a bad idea." "Probably," Quinn agreed. "But I can't seem to care," she laughed shakily. "We should at least save my paintings first. Deal?" They worked for the next 2 hours, moving everything away from the window and assessing the damage. Only 3 pieces had been seriously affected, including the commission. Quinn followed Autumn's instructions, helping her set up fans to dry the canvases and organize her supplies for the repair work ahead. When they finally emerged from the studio, both exhausted and paint spattered, the storm had settled into steady rain. Quinn checked his watch and was shocked to see it was past midnight. "Go to bed," Autumn said, reading his surprise. "I'm just going to make some tea." "I'll keep you company," Quinn offered. He wasn't ready to leave her yet, not after everything that had shifted between them tonight. They ended up on the couch with steaming mugs, sitting close enough that their knees touched. The cabin felt especially cozy with rain drumming on the roof, and Quinn found himself wishing he could freeze this moment, keep it safe from the complications waiting in the real world. "Tell me something true," Autumn said suddenly. Something real about you. Quinn considered carefully. He couldn't tell her about Zeller Industries, couldn't explain the scope of his wealth or the empire he'd walked away from. But he could give her something honest. "I've never been in love," he said. "Not really. I thought I was once or twice, but it never felt like what people describe. Never felt essential." "What changed?" Autumn asked softly. Quinn met her eyes. "You," she drew in a sharp breath. "Quinn, we barely know each other. I know you take your coffee black in the morning and with cream in the afternoon. I know you paint when you're anxious and cook when you're thinking through a problem. I know you hum unconsciously when you're happy and get a little crease right here." He touched the spot between her eyebrows when you're concentrating. "I know you're brave and kind and more talented than you give yourself credit for." He paused. "Maybe I don't know your whole life story, but I know you, the parts that matter." Autumn set her mug down with shaking hands. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of wanting this too much. Of letting myself believe in something that has to end." She looked at him, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen her. "I already lost one person I loved. I don't know if I can survive that again." Quinn pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She came willingly, burying her face in his shoulder. "I can't promise you forever," he said against her hair. "I don't know what happens when the trial ends, where I'll be or what my life will look like. But I can promise that whatever time we have, whatever this is between us, it's real. It matters. You matter to me." Autumn pulled back just enough to look at him. Her eyes searched his face for a long moment, then she nodded. "Okay, okay, okay, I'm all in." She smiled, tentative but genuine. "Wherever this goes, however it ends, I want to try, with you." Quinn kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. When they finally pulled apart, Autumn yawned hugely, making them both laugh. "Bed," Quinn said firmly. "You need sleep if we're going to tackle that painting tomorrow. Are you always this bossy? You have no idea." He stood, pulling her up with him. At her bedroom door, he kissed her forehead. "Good night, Autumn." "Good night, Quinn." He watched her disappear into her room, then made his way to his own. As he lay in bed listening to the rain, Quinn felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or happiness. Either way, it was terrifying and wonderful all at once. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean. Quinn woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and found Autumn in the kitchen with a smile that made his heart skip. "Ready to learn about art restoration?" she asked. "Lead the way." They spent the morning in her studio, Autumn explaining techniques while Quinn mixed paints and prepped brushes. He discovered he actually had a decent eye for color matching, which pleased him more than he wanted to admit. Autumn worked on the damaged commission while he practiced basic brushstrokes on scrap canvas, and the hours flew by. "You're not bad at this," Autumn said, examining his practice piece during a lunch break. "You've got good control." "Beginner's luck," Quinn demurred, but he was secretly pleased. "No, seriously, look at this transition." She pointed to where he'd blended two colors. "That takes most people weeks to get smooth. You did it on your first try." Quinn shrugged. "I've always been good at following instructions." "I don't think it's just that." Autumn studied him curiously. "You have this way of approaching new things with total confidence, like you're used to succeeding at whatever you try." She was getting too close to the truth again. Quinn deflected by leaning in and kissing her, which worked beautifully as a distraction. Autumn made a surprised sound that turned into a soft hum of pleasure, her fingers tangling in his hair. "That's cheating," she murmured against his lips. "What?" "Using kisses to avoid questions." Quinn grinned. "Is it working?" "Unfortunately, yes." She pulled back with visible effort. "But we really should finish this painting. The client is expecting it." They worked through the afternoon, falling into an easy rhythm. Autumn talked him through her process, explaining why she chose certain brush strokes, how light affected color perception, the way emotion could be conveyed through technique. Quinn absorbed it all, fascinated by the way her mind worked. By evening, the painting was nearly restored. Autumn stepped back, eyeing it critically. "One more session tomorrow and it should be perfect. Thank you for helping." "Anytime." Quinn meant it. He'd enjoyed the day more than he'd enjoyed most of his high-powered business meetings. There was something satisfying about creating beauty instead of just making money. They made dinner together, moving around each other with the ease of long practice. Autumn put pasta on to boil while Quinn prepped a salad and garlic bread. They talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing naturally. "Tell me about your family," Autumn said as they sat down to eat. Quinn tensed. His family was complicated in ways he couldn't begin to explain without revealing his identity. "Not much to tell. My parents live on the East Coast. We're not particularly close. Siblings? No, only child." That at least was true. "What about you?" "Two sisters, both younger. They live in Colorado with their families." Autumn's expression softened. "They wanted me to move closer after David died, but I couldn't. Needed space to figure out who I was without him." "You see them much?" "Twice a year, usually. Summer and Christmas." She twirled pasta on her fork. "They worry about me out here alone, think I'm hiding from life." "Are you?" Quinn asked gently. Autumn considered this. "I was, for a while. But lately I've been thinking it's time to engage with the world again. Not move back to the city or anything drastic, but maybe show my art more, travel a bit." She met his eyes. "Maybe open myself up to possibilities I've been avoiding." The weight of her words settled between them. Quinn reached across the table, lacing his fingers with hers. "I think that sounds healthy." "It's terrifying," Autumn admitted, "but good terrifying, the kind that means you're growing." After dinner, they took their now traditional places on the porch, watching the sun set in brilliant oranges and purples. Quinn had his arm around Autumn's shoulders, and she was tucked against his side in a way that felt absolutely right. "Quinn," she said softly. "Yeah. Whatever happens after you leave here, I need you to know you've changed something for me. Reminded me that I'm still alive, that I can still feel things." She looked up at him. "So thank you." Quinn's throat was too tight to speak. He kissed the top of her head and held her closer, wishing with everything in him that he could give her the future she deserved. The marshals called the next day. Quinn took the call on the secure line in his room, closing the door for privacy. Marshal Hendricks got straight to the point. "Trial date is set, 4 weeks from today. We'll move you to a secure facility 1 week prior for prep and protection." "Understood," Quinn said, even as his stomach sank. 3 weeks left with Autumn. It felt like both an eternity and nowhere near enough time. "How are you holding up?" Hendricks asked. "Miss Reeves treating you well, very well. She's been great. Good. She's one of our best. Keep your head down and stay alert. We've had no credible threats, but that could change as the trial approaches." After hanging up, Quinn sat on his bed for a long time, staring at nothing. He'd known this was temporary. He'd known he couldn't hide forever. But knowing didn't make it easier. When he emerged, he found Autumn in the studio finishing the restored painting. She looked up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "Bad news. Trial date is set. I leave in 3 weeks." Autumn's face went carefully neutral. She set down her brush and wiped her hands on a rag, buying time. "That's good, right? Means this nightmare can finally be over for you." "Yeah," Quinn said, though it didn't feel good. It felt like the beginning of another nightmare entirely. Autumn crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "Then we make the most of the time we have. No regrets, no holding back. Deal? Deal." She kissed him then, and it tasted like promises neither of them could keep. But Quinn kissed her back anyway, because the alternative was letting go, and he wasn't ready for that. Not even close. The next 3 weeks were the best of Quinn's life. He and Autumn fell into their relationship with the intensity of people who knew it was finite. They spent their days working side by side, Quinn helping with projects around the cabin and in her studio, while Autumn taught him skills he'd never imagined learning. She showed him how to paint basic landscapes, and he discovered real joy in the process of creating something from nothing. Nights were spent on the porch or curled together on the couch, talking until late hours about everything except the approaching deadline. Autumn told him about her marriage, the good and the difficult, and how David's death had shattered her sense of security. Quinn shared carefully edited stories about his life, focusing on feelings rather than specifics. He told her about the loneliness of his previous existence, the way success had isolated him, the realization that he'd been chasing the wrong things. "What would you do differently?" Autumn asked one night. "If you could start over," Quinn thought about this seriously. "I'd focus more on people and less on outcomes. I'd take time to actually live instead of just working. I'd find someone like you much sooner." Autumn's eyes glistened in the lamplight. "Smooth talker." "I'm serious." Quinn pulled her closer. "You've shown me what I was missing. What actually matters. And what's that? Connection, presence, this." He gestured between them. "Someone who sees me, really sees me, and likes what they find." "I more than like you," Autumn whispered. Quinn's heart kicked hard against his ribs. Yeah, she kissed him softly. "I love you. I know it's fast and maybe crazy, but I do. I love you." Quinn closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. He'd never said those words to anyone, had never felt them with such certainty. But now, with Autumn in his arms and time running out, they came easily. "I love you too. So much it scares me." They made love for the first time that night, tender and intense. Autumn fell asleep in his arms afterward, and Quinn lay awake watching her, trying to memorize every detail. The curve of her shoulder, the way her hair spread across the pillow, the peaceful expression on her sleeping face. He wanted to capture this moment, hold it forever against the cold reality waiting for him. As the days dwindled, Quinn became almost desperate to tell Autumn everything. She deserved to know who he really was, what she was falling in love with. But the Marshalls had been clear. Revealing his identity put them both at risk. The people who wanted him dead had resources and connections. The less Autumn knew, the safer she'd be. So he swallowed the truth and tried to show her through actions instead. He ordered supplies online with the credit card the Marshalls provided, upgrading her studio equipment and replacing worn tools around the cabin. When Autumn protested the expense, he brushed it off. "Consider it payment for room and board," he said, "and cooking lessons." "You've more than paid for that with all the repairs," Autumn argued, but he could tell she was pleased. A week before he was scheduled to leave, Autumn received news that a prestigious gallery in Seattle wanted to feature her work in their autumn show. She hung up the phone looking dazed. "This is huge," she said. "This gallery has launched careers. But the show is in 6 months and they want at least 15 pieces. I don't know if I can produce that much quality work in time." "You can," Quinn said firmly. "You're incredibly talented and you work fast when you're focused. This is your shot. Take it." Autumn bit her lip. "It would mean really committing. No more witness placements for a while. I'd have to tell the Marshalls I need a break." "Then tell them." Quinn took her hands. "Autumn, you've spent years helping other people. It's time to help yourself. Chase this dream." She searched his face. "You really think I can do it?" "I know you can." The smile that broke across her face was radiant. She threw her arms around him, laughing. Okay, I'll do it. I'll call them back tomorrow and accept." Quinn held her tight, thrilled for her and heartbroken for himself. By the time her show opened, he'd be long gone, probably back in his old life or some version of it. He wouldn't get to see her triumph, wouldn't be there to celebrate with her, unless he found a way to stay in her life. The thought took root and grew. He couldn't hide forever, couldn't keep lying about who he was. But once the trial was over, once the threat was neutralized, maybe he could come clean. Tell Autumn everything and see if what they had could survive the truth. His last few days at the cabin passed in a blur of bittersweet moments. He and Autumn hiked the mountain trails, made love under the stars, cooked elaborate meals they barely tasted. They didn't talk about what came next, as if ignoring it might make it go away. The night before the marshals were scheduled to pick him up, Autumn was quiet. They sat on the porch as usual, but the easy comfort had been replaced by tense awareness of time running out. "I don't know how to do this," Autumn finally said, her voice small. "How do I just let you walk away?" Quinn's chest felt crushed. "I don't want to walk away." "God, Autumn, if I had any choice, I know." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I know you have to go. I know this was always temporary, but it doesn't make it easier." Quinn pulled her into his lap, holding her as she cried. His own eyes burned, but he kept it together, trying to be strong for her. "Listen to me. This isn't over. I can't explain everything right now, but after the trial, I'm going to come back. I'm going to find you, and I'm going to tell you everything I couldn't say. And then we'll figure out what comes next, together." Autumn pulled back, hope and skepticism warring in her expression. "You can't promise that. You don't know what your life will be like afterward." "I know I want you in it." Quinn cupped her face in his hands. "Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, I'm coming back to you. That's a promise." She kissed him desperately, and they made love right there on the porch, urgent and raw. Afterward, they stayed tangled together until the sun started to rise, neither willing to sleep and lose even a minute. The marshals arrived at noon. Quinn had already packed his meager belongings, and Autumn had breakfast ready. They ate in near silence, the weight of goodbye pressing down on them. When the knock came, Autumn flinched. Quinn stood, every instinct screaming at him to refuse to leave. But he couldn't. People were counting on his testimony. Justice depended on him following through. Marshal Hendricks was brisk but kind. "Ready to go, Mr. Zeller." Autumn's head snapped up. Zeller, Quinn's stomach dropped. He'd been so careful. Hendricks had slipped up, used his real name. From the marshal's expression, the man realized his mistake immediately. "I'll be in the car," Hendricks said quickly, retreating. Quinn and Autumn stared at each other. He watched her put pieces together, saw the moment understanding dawned. "Zeller," she repeated slowly. "As in Zeller Industries, the pharmaceutical company that's been all over the news." Her voice rose. "You're Quinn Zeller, the whistleblower CEO, the billionaire. Autumn, you lied to me." She backed away from him, hurt and anger flashing across her face. "This whole time, you let me think you were just some regular person, but you're not. You're one of the richest men in the country." "I couldn't tell you," Quinn said desperately. "The marshals said don't." Autumn held up a hand. "Don't blame this on them. You had plenty of chances to tell me who you were. When we got close, when we fell in love, you could have trusted me with the truth." "I was trying to protect you," Quinn pleaded. "The less you knew, the less I knew, the easier it was for you to play house with the simple country girl." Autumn's voice broke. Was any of it real? Or was this just a way to pass the time until you could go back to your empire? It was all real. Quinn reached for her, but she stepped back. "Autumn, everything I felt, everything I said, that was real. I love you." "You love me, but you don't trust me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "That's what this comes down to. You didn't trust me enough to be honest." "That's not fair," Quinn said, his own voice rough with emotion. "I was in an impossible situation, and now you're leaving." Autumn wrapped her arms around herself. Going back to your real life, your billions and boardrooms and everything I could never be part of. That's not true. I meant what I said last night. After the trial, you'll remember this as a weird blip in your life. The time you hid in the woods and had a fling with your protector. But it won't mean the same to you as it does to me, because your real world is huge and important and full of opportunities. I'm just the woman who kept you safe for a few weeks. The horn sounded from outside. Hendricks getting impatient. I have to go, Quinn said, feeling like his heart was being ripped from his chest. But please, please believe me when I say I love you. The person I was here with you, that's more me than I've ever been. And I'm coming back. Autumn wouldn't look at him. Goodbye, Quinn. He wanted to argue more to make her understand, but the horn sounded again. With everything in him resisting, Quinn picked up his bag and walked to the door. He paused, looking back at her one last time. I love you, Autumn Reeves. That's the truest thing I've ever said. Then he was gone, climbing into the black SUV while Autumn stood in the doorway crying. As they pulled away, Quinn watched her get smaller in the side mirror until the cabin disappeared around a curve. I'm sorry about the name slip, Hendricks said. That was careless of me. Quinn didn't respond. He felt hollowed out, empty in a way that had nothing to do with physical hunger. He'd found something precious in that cabin, something he'd been searching for his whole life without knowing it, and he'd lost it because he couldn't be honest about who he was. The next week was hell. Quinn was moved to a secure facility in downtown Portland, kept in a hotel suite under 24-hour guard. He met with federal prosecutors for hours each day, going over his testimony, preparing for cross-examination. At night, he lay awake thinking about Autumn. He tried calling the cabin twice, but she didn't answer. He didn't blame her. What could he possibly say that would make up for months of lying by omission? The trial started on schedule. Quinn took the stand on day 3, spending 2 full days testifying about what he'd discovered at Zeller Industries and why he'd gone to the FBI. The defense attorneys tried to tear him apart, suggesting he'd fabricated evidence out of spite after being removed as CEO. But Quinn had documentation, emails, internal memos that proved the conspiracy. When he finally stepped down, the lead prosecutor assured him they had enough for conviction. The defendants would likely spend decades in prison. Quinn felt nothing. Justice was being served, corruption exposed, but all he could think about was Autumn. After the trial concluded with guilty verdicts across the board, the marshals released Quinn from protection. The threat was essentially over with the conspirators in custody. He was free to return to his life. Whatever that meant now. Quinn's first stop was his attorney's office in Manhattan. David Chen greeted him with relief and a mountain of paperwork. Welcome back to the land of the living, Chen said. We have a lot to discuss. The board wants to reinstate you as CEO. There are at least 3 major news outlets requesting exclusive interviews, and your net worth has actually increased during your absence thanks to some smart investments your financial team made. Quinn listened with half an ear as Chen outlined everything that needed his attention: his company, his fortune, his reputation, all the things that had once been the center of his universe, and none of it mattered without Autumn. David, Quinn interrupted, I need you to do something for me. Of course. What do you need? Find out everything you can about getting into the Seattle art world, specifically a gallery showing in about 5 months. I need to make sure someone's work gets the recognition it deserves. Chen blinked. I'm not sure I understand. There's a woman, Quinn said. An artist. She's incredibly talented and she's got a shot at a major gallery show. I want to make sure nothing stands in her way. Funding if she needs it, connections, whatever it takes. Quinn, if this is about, it's about helping someone who helped me when I needed it most. Quinn met his attorney's eyes. Can you do this? Of course. Give me her name. Quinn spent the next 2 months trying to rebuild some version of a life. He declined to return as CEO, instead appointing an independent executive committee to run Zeller Industries, while he maintained a board position. He gave carefully worded interviews about the trial, donated substantial sums to organizations fighting pharmaceutical corruption, and tried to figure out what he wanted. The answer was always the same. Autumn. He didn't call her. After her reaction to learning his real identity, he knew a phone call wouldn't be enough. He needed to see her face to face to explain properly and prove that he meant everything he'd said. But first, he needed to give her the space she'd asked for. Let her process, let her focus on her art. Show her through actions that he respected her and her career. Through his attorney, Quinn quietly ensured that Autumn had everything she needed for the gallery show. When she mentioned supply costs, an anonymous grant appeared. When she worried about framing expenses, a sponsor came through. Quinn made sure his involvement was invisible, that Autumn would believe she'd earned everything herself, because she had. Quinn was just removing obstacles. As the show date approached, Quinn grew increasingly nervous. He'd sent a message to Autumn through the gallery, requesting an invitation. She hadn't responded, and he didn't know if that meant she'd refused or simply ignored the request. He flew to Seattle 2 days before the opening, checking into a downtown hotel. His plan was simple. Go to the show, see Autumn, and lay everything on the line. If she told him to leave, he would. But at least he'd have tried. The gallery opening was on a Friday night. Quinn arrived early before the crowd and stood outside looking at Autumn's name on the banner. Pride swelled in his chest. She'd done it. She'd created 15 stunning pieces in just over 4 months, and now one of the best galleries on the West Coast was featuring her work. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The gallery was beautiful, all white walls and perfect lighting. Autumn's paintings were displayed prominently, and seeing them in this context took Quinn's breath away. They were powerful and moving, each one telling a story about nature's violence and beauty. And there, in the center of the main room, was a new piece he'd never seen. A landscape of mountains at sunset, but in the foreground was the cabin. Their cabin. Quinn moved closer, drawn to it. The detail was exquisite, from the newly stained deck to the garden they'd tended together. And there, barely visible in one window, was the shadow of 2 figures standing close. I call it safe harbor. Quinn spun around. Autumn stood a few feet away wearing a simple black dress that made her look sophisticated and stunning. Her hair was up, showing the elegant line of her neck, and her eyes were guarded. "Autumn," he breathed. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." She gestured at the painting. "I did it from memory. During the trial coverage, I saw your photo everywhere, saw who you really were. I thought it might help me move on painting it. But instead, it just made me miss you more." Quinn's heart hammered. "I've missed you every single day." "I'm so sorry I wasn't honest with you from the beginning." Autumn crossed her arms. "Why are you here, Quinn?" "Because I meant what I said. I'm in love with you and I want a chance to prove it." He gestured around the gallery. "Look at what you've accomplished. You're amazing, and I just want to be part of your life if you'll let me." "How did you even know about this show?" Autumn asked slowly. "I never told you the gallery name or the date." Quinn hesitated, then decided honesty was the only option. "I had my attorney find out. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to succeed. Some anonymous grants and sponsorships might have come your way through his connections." Autumn's eyes widened. "You've been helping me. This whole time. I just cleared some obstacles. The talent is all yours. The work is all yours." I didn't want you to worry about money when you should be focusing on art. Quinn, that's—" Autumn trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. "I don't know whether to kiss you or yell at you." "Kiss me," Quinn suggested hopefully. "Definitely kiss me." A smile tugged at her lips despite her obvious efforts to stay serious. "You can't just throw money at problems and expect that to fix everything." "I know. That's not what I'm trying to do." Quinn took a step closer. "I'm trying to show you that I believe in you, that I want to support you and your dreams. Not because of my money, but because I love you, and this is what people do when they love each other. They help, they support, they show up." Autumn's eyes glistened. "I was so angry at you. For weeks I was furious about the lying. But then I saw you testifying, saw how much you risked to do the right thing. I understood why you couldn't tell me everything. But I should have told you more," Quinn said. "I should have trusted you with the truth about who I was, even if I couldn't give you details. I was scared that if you knew about the money, about the life I'd lived, you'd see me differently." "I would have," Autumn admitted, "but maybe not in the way you think. I would have seen how brave you were to walk away from all that power and wealth to testify, how strong you had to be to do the right thing knowing it would cost you everything." Quinn closed the distance between them, taking her hands. "It didn't cost me everything. I found you." "Quinn, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I've spent my whole life building an empire, chasing success, trying to prove something to myself and everyone else. And then I spent a few weeks in a cabin with you, and I realized I'd been doing it all wrong. Success isn't about money or power. It's about connection. It's about waking up next to someone who makes you want to be better. It's about building something real with someone you love." Tears spilled down Autumn's cheeks. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to build that with you. I don't care if it's in the cabin or New York or anywhere else. I don't care if you want me to keep running Zeller Industries or if you want me to walk away completely. I just want to be with you." Autumn laughed through her tears. "That's insane. We barely know each other." "Then let's take time to know each other properly. No hiding, no lies, just us figuring out if this can work in the real world." Quinn squeezed her hands. "I love you, Autumn Reeves. I loved you when I was hiding in your cabin, and I love you now that I'm back in my own life. That hasn't changed, and it won't change." "I love you too," Autumn whispered. "Even when I was angry, even when I told myself to let you go, I still loved you. You made me feel alive again." Quinn pulled her close, kissing her with everything he had. Autumn kissed him back, her arms wrapping around his neck as the world fell away. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling. "We're going to have to figure out a lot of things," she said. "Like where we'll live and how to balance your business world with my art and whether we can really make this work." "We'll figure it out together," Quinn promised. "One day at a time." The gallery manager cleared her throat delicately. "Miss Reeves, the guests are starting to arrive." Autumn glanced at the door, where well-dressed people were indeed beginning to filter in. She looked back at Quinn, uncertainty crossing her face. "Stay. I know this probably isn't your scene, but I'm not going anywhere," Quinn said firmly. "I want to be here for your big night." Over the next 3 hours, Quinn watched with pride as Autumn charmed gallery patrons and art critics, explaining her work and vision. He stayed in the background, content to observe, but she kept glancing over at him as if to reassure herself he was really there. By the time the gallery closed, Autumn had sold 6 paintings, including Safe Harbor to a private collector who'd offered an absurd amount. The gallery manager was thrilled, already talking about future shows. Quinn waited while Autumn wrapped up final conversations, then offered his arm as they walked out into the cool Seattle night. "That was incredible," Quinn said. "You were incredible." Autumn leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. "It feels surreal, like it happened to someone else." It happened to you. You earned every bit of it. Quinn hailed a cab. Where are you staying? A hotel near the airport. Autumn gave the address to the driver, then settled against Quinn's shoulder. Where are you staying? Downtown. But I can ride with you, make sure you get back safely. Autumn was quiet for a moment. Or you could come up, we have a lot to talk about. Quinn's heart kicked. Are you sure? I'm sure. She laced her fingers with his. I don't want you to leave yet. They spent the night talking, really talking for the first time since he'd left the cabin. Quinn told her everything. About growing up as the Zeller heir, the pressure to succeed, the loneliness of wealth. He explained how he discovered the corruption, his decision to go to the FBI, and the attempt on his life that had landed him in witness protection. Autumn told him about the years since David's death, the slow process of healing, and what it had meant to have Quinn appear in her life when she'd finally started opening up again. I thought you were a gift, she admitted. A reminder that I could feel again, but I was terrified of losing you. You won't lose me, Quinn promised. Not if I can help it. They fell asleep tangled together, and Quinn woke to sunlight and Autumn tracing patterns on his chest. Good morning, she murmured. Best morning I've had in months. Quinn captured her hand, kissing her knuckles. What do you want to do today? I should probably get back to the cabin. I have a commission deadline next week. Can I come with you? Quinn asked. I could help. I'm pretty good at mixing paints now. Autumn smiled. I'd like that. They spent the next few weeks falling back into rhythm, but better this time because there were no secrets between them. Quinn worked remotely for Zeller Industries, handling only the essential decisions that required his input. The rest of the time, he helped Autumn with her art, and they explored what their relationship could look like. It wasn't always easy. They came from different worlds and had to negotiate expectations and lifestyles. But they approached each obstacle as a team, compromising and communicating. 3 months after the gallery show, Quinn proposed, not with an enormous diamond or a public spectacle, but with a simple band he designed himself, kneeling in front of the cabin at sunset. I know we're still figuring things out, he said. But I know I want to figure them out with you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me? Autumn said yes through happy tears. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the cabin, with only close family and friends in attendance. Autumn's sisters cried through the vows, and Marshall Hendricks showed up with an expensive bottle of champagne and an apology for the name slip that had almost derailed everything. Best mistake I ever made, Hendricks said, shaking Quinn's hand. You two are perfect together. Quinn and Autumn split their time between the cabin and a house they bought in Seattle, close enough to the art scene for Autumn's career, but secluded enough for privacy. Quinn officially stepped down from Zeller Industries, appointing new leadership and transitioning to philanthropic work focused on healthcare reform and corporate accountability. Autumn's career flourished. She had shows in galleries across the country, her powerful landscapes earning critical acclaim and devoted collectors. Quinn attended every opening, proud beyond measure. 2 years after their wedding, Autumn discovered she was pregnant. Their daughter, Hope, was born on a snowy January morning, and Quinn cried when he held her for the first time. She's perfect, he whispered, marveling at tiny fingers and dark eyes. She really is, Autumn agreed, exhausted and radiant. They brought Hope home to the cabin, and Quinn thought about how far he'd come from the terrified man who'd shown up on this property years before. He'd lost everything that had once defined him: his company, his wealth-driven identity, his carefully constructed life. And in losing it, he'd gained everything that actually mattered. On their 3rd anniversary, Quinn and Autumn sat on the porch watching Hope toddle around the yard, chasing butterflies. Autumn was pregnant again, this time with a boy they planned to name David after her late husband. Quinn had suggested it, wanting to honor the man who'd loved Autumn first. "Happy?" Autumn asked, leaning against him. Quinn looked at his daughter laughing in the sunshine, at his wife glowing with new life, at the home they'd built together. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the corruption he'd exposed, the danger he'd faced, the federal marshals delivering him to this remote cabin, and the woman who'd opened her door without hesitation. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," he said honestly. Autumn smiled and kissed him. "Good, because this is forever." Forever sounds perfect. Hope ran over then, demanding to be picked up, and Quinn swung her into his arms while she shrieked with delight. Autumn laughed, her hand resting on her growing belly, and Quinn felt a peace he'd never known in his old life. He'd been born into billions, built an empire, and walked away from it all to do the right thing. In the process, he'd found something worth infinitely more than any fortune. A real home, true love, and a family that made every sacrifice worthwhile. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors that reminded Quinn of autumn's art, he held his daughter close and pulled his wife against his side. This was what success actually looked like. Not boardrooms or bank accounts, but love and laughter, and the quiet joy of ordinary moments made extraordinary by the people you shared them with. Quinn Zeller had finally found what he'd been searching for his entire life, hidden in a cabin in the woods with a woman who'd seen past his billions to the man underneath. And he would spend every day for the rest of his life making sure Autumn Reeves never regretted opening her door to a stranger who'd needed saving. Because in saving him, she'd saved herself too. And together, they'd built something neither of them could have created alone. A love story that started in fear and secrecy but bloomed into trust and joy, proving that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Years from now, Quinn would tell Hope and David about how he'd met their mother, about federal marshals and witness protection, and the woman brave enough to shelter a stranger. He'd tell them about falling in love in a cabin in the mountains, about making pasta from scratch and learning to paint, about the moment he'd realized that autumn was his home. And his children would grow up knowing that real wealth had nothing to do with money and everything to do with love, family, and the courage to be honest even when it was hard. They'd learn that sometimes you had to lose everything to find what truly mattered, but that was still years away. For now, Quinn simply held his family close and watched the stars emerge one by one, grateful for every choice that had led him to this moment. The testimony that had cost him his company, the marshals who'd brought him here, the woman who'd taken him in and loved him despite his secrets. Autumn looked up at him, her eyes soft in the twilight. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," Quinn said simply. "How grateful." "Me too." Autumn kissed Hope's head as the little girl yawned against Quinn's shoulder. "Should we get her to bed?" "In a minute." Quinn wasn't ready to go inside yet, to break this perfect moment. "Let's just stay here a little longer." So they did, the three of them soon to be four, watching night fall over the place where everything had changed. Where a young CEO running for his life had found something worth more than billions. Where a widow reopening her heart had discovered love again. Where two broken people had found each other and built something whole. The cabin stood solid around them, witness to their story, shelter from storms both literal and metaphorical. Inside, the paintings Autumn had created hung on every wall, beautiful and fierce and true. Outside, the garden they'd planted together would bloom again come spring. And in every corner, in every room, were the fingerprints of their shared life. Books they'd read together, dishes they'd cooked together, memories they'd made together. This was home. Not because of the structure or the location, but because of the love that filled it. And as Hope finally fell asleep, and Quinn carried her inside with Autumn following close behind, he knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Every single time he'd chosen truth over safety, love over wealth, Autumn over everything. And he'd choose her again every day for the rest of his life. Because some things were worth more than billions. Some things couldn't be bought or traded or measured in quarterly reports. Some things could only be earned through honesty, built through trust, and protected with everything you had. Family, love, home. Quinn had all three now, and he'd never been richer,